When we let go of this obsession of who we think we are, that's when we can really embody unconditional love.
Trinidad and Tobago, the wider Caribbean, internationally, all the persons viewing, plus you are here with us on Sunset, the evening show. Welcome, I'm your host, Randolph Boodhoo, and with me this evening, I have Camille and Anya. How are you all?
Doing well. Happy to be here this evening.
Happy Friday.
Yes, happy Friday, guys. Today is May the 10th, and believe it or not, 30 years ago today, Nelson Mandela was made president.
Wow, okay.
Yeah. What do you all know about Nelson Mandela?
I just remember Nelson Mandela legacy and him fighting for the cause of, in terms of democracy in South
Right.
Africa. And what I admired is that he championed this and having to sacrifice his life by going to jail for this cause, and to be freed many years later, and then to be put in the position as president of South Africa. I think that story is a beacon for most persons, and that they should look at that and realize that even though sometimes you have to make many sacrifices, many roads would get you there.
Yeah.
Just keep your eye on the cause.
For sure, for sure. And he had plenty powerful quotes. For instance, if you talk to a man in a language he understands, that goes to his head. If you talk to him in his language, that goes to his heart. And one very relevant to what we're going to be talking about first this evening: do not judge me by my success. Judge me by how many times I fell down and got back up again. So even though you all would have fallen down this week, there may have been struggles, you are here. It's Friday, you have succeeded, you're here with us on Sunset, and you're going to make it to next week, and you're going to grow and go and become better. The topic this evening, guys, the first topic this evening is actually defining progress and achievement. So what do I mean by that? You know, oftentimes progress and achievement is measured on a straight line. In other words, Anya might come from a certain background, I come from a different background, we both become lawyers, the achievement is measured as the same. But there are two differences. For instance, let's say when I was going to primary school, I didn't grow up with current, and I had to look for a flambeau every night to light the pages for me to read, as opposed to you who maybe had access to electricity, extra lessons, parents who had the know-how, whatever else. Is the measurement of success for both of us who attain the same goal, should that be the same?
No.
Why
It
not?
shouldn't. Because at the end of the day, let's look and define success.
Right.
Firstly, success for me, success for you, Camille, may be something different. We all have goals. Just like Nelson Mandela.
Correct.
He had goals. He came from royalty. A lot of people don't know that.
Yes, he did.
Yes. But he spent 27 years in prison.
In prison.
Yeah. So that's a great example of someone who rose to presidency in another country but may not have spent 27 years in prison.
Well,
right?
true.
So success is each individual's, what they achieve and what their personal goals are. So yes, the end goal would have been to be a lawyer. But for me, I had less hurdles to overcome.
Correct.
You had more. So in other words, your learning curve would have been different. Yeah?
In addition to the learning curve, the journey as well. Because if we're piggybacking again off the Nelson Mandela story, you came from royalty, and based on the time of his story, he came from royalty. He was born in 1918, his father died in 1930. He enrolled in university in 1939, and in 1940, 1 year later, he was expelled for being in a student protest for what he believed. So think about that decision in itself. You are from royalty, the expectations of you are high. I am sure this was going against certain rules or known given circumstances that you need to follow to become part of the family, what the family expects you, and you went against this because you had a vision, you had a goal, you wanted to be successful in it. And he now is totally different in terms of success as a president and many presidents across the world.
Yeah.
And he's known for it, thank God. He's known for it because his story is told. What about the persons who are not known? The everyday man who is outside here fighting hard, going through the pains, getting somewhere, and sometimes has to deal with the dilemma of being measured as everyone else.
I think that is unfortunate because each person has a different life journey. And through life's journeys, you would have different experiences which would form your character and the way that you view the world and interact with each other. And from that, it also determines how you flourish as a person. And even though, as we were talking about having the same goal as being attorneys, our experiences would make us very different attorneys.
Okay.
How we process information. Sometimes, again, it comes back to the character, what we may or may not do, the types of cases that we would take, and the way that we go about doing that. So I think it should be something that is very individual, and we need to appreciate different people's journeys and how they got to that point of what their goal or success is, but it's a very individual journey.
I agree. It's a very individual journey. And what you're saying there basically is a differentiation in itself, you know. The fact that your product
That's right.
of success differentiates. So we're both a lawyer, no problem. We got called to the bar at the same time. But because my pain to get there was greater, my ability to create value possibly would also be greater because I'm hungry. I want it. I know what I did to fight to get here. And guess what? Because of that, the output of quality I would give is going to be totally different. But is that sufficient measurement? The fact that just because I personally knew I worked hard to get here and I am putting out a quality product, is that sufficient?
No, that's a funny thing. Who's to say that I didn't work hard to get there? Yes, you would have had more hurdles. And of course, we both would have learned from our failures. The failures would have differed. Because a great part of success is not just your determination, your drive. But it is learning from failure and knowing how to pick yourself up each time. However, you may have had more, right? Whereas I would have to come home and just plug in my laptop.
Right.
You may have to make sure your laptop is charged fully before you leave campus.
Yeah.
Right? So those are things that we overcome. But who's to say I did not work just as hard to put in just as much hours studying?
True.
Right. So when you're looking at quality now and looking at success, and you look at, let's take Kaizen, which comes from the Japanese, which is part of total quality, you look at continuous improvement. So if you want to look at attaining your goals and all of that, we both would have had continuous improvement. So here it is now, I am then counter-arguing you and making the point that, yes, our backgrounds were different. Yes, your journey may have been longer. But who is to say that we did not work just as hard to get there?
Where is the measurement or where is the metric? I agree with you.
Correct.
I agree with you. But I am sure if it is we were to put these things down on a paper and start to put figures to it, let's see who would win on here. Let's put quantities in terms of opportunity cost
Right.
that both of us would have suffered, right?
Yes.
Let's look at the fact that there would be a health perspective that I can add. The strain on my eyes because I don't have proper lighting.
Right.
The lack of rest because I had to go longer hours to get information.
Yes.
The possibility that I was balancing a job as well as the studies. And let's put values to this and create a measurement. Who would be the loser in the measurement?
So let me
I want Camille to chat.
I wanted to answer too, but let me throw one more in the mix there for you, Camille, right? So all of that, yes, but guess what? His success actually is not going to be his success alone. His success is going to be the success of his family.
Right.
Because he may be the only university graduate thus far in his family.
Possibly.
So his whole family is behind him. Yes, my whole family is behind me, but guess what? My brother also went to university. My brother is studying engineering. So let's throw that in the
Right, so no problem. So let's recap, Camille. We have 4 factors we're looking at here. We're looking at opportunity loss, putting a value there. We're looking at the health aspect because there are different health dynamics, strain on the eye, lack of rest, higher stress levels because of balancing a job or whatever else. We're looking at Now a positive factor in one regard in terms of family support as opposed to family competition and that kind of thing. If we were to put values to these things and really create an equation, who comes out the person with more success?
Unfortunately, I think it's still equal.
you
I'm going to totally mess up the equation here. And I say this because along the way, you still acquire different skill sets.
Correct.
So that one person may be more resilient than other. One may have a different strategic thinking process than the other.
Correct.
And hence the reason I say no. No one comes out greater than the other. Everyone comes out with their own attributes, right? And success is equal. So that's my final answer.
And I think if we ever have to get into a fight, we need to have to mediate. Everything will end up equal. Both of us will leave feeling like, we were on the same page. But I would agree partially with all of you, because at the end of the day, the quality of the product, even if the starting point is we're called to the bar at the same time, we become lawyers at the same time, the journey forward depends on what you took out of your journey. Whether it was a privileged journey or a journey from a poor socioeconomic background, what you took out of it, what you learn from it, how you let those trials inform your success is what will lead you to the continuing journey of growth and all of that. But my thing here now is there are persons who come from poor socioeconomic backgrounds and make it no matter what. No matter what. And then there are those who are from poor socioeconomic backgrounds as well, but they fall into the zone of complaining. I can't. Woe is me. Life has been unfair. Why didn't I have the circumstances like Anya's family and this and that in the story that we're just talking about? What differentiates these two types of people?
Perspective. I believe that, yes, you can have the same circumstances, but it's all about how you look at it. And sometimes you know that if you don't have this for yourself, even in your environment, those persons that you interact with. So someone may have a mother that says, yes, these are your challenges, but look at it in this positive way.
Okay.
This is the way that you are going. Look for that one light or glimmer of hope that gives you the motivation to keep going. And I think that it's all perspective, because that determines how you respond as well to those challenges.
All right, I agree fully. Your perspective and your influences as well. But I really want to dig deeper here, because I think there is something more in certain circumstances that differentiate people. Because as we well know, there are persons who have that positive that positive reinforcement in their environment, parents pushing them, maybe uncles or aunts who are successful, they're exposed to certain things and still they fall into the why me, I can't do it, etc., etc. And then there are people now who have nothing. You might hear circumstances where mommy was a abuser of drugs, daddy left. I am from one of the not so well-to-be communities. There is little vision I could have in terms of where can I go? What separates these two people in that regard? Removing the external factors and the perspective, or not the perspective, but removing the external factors. What's the really underlying trait or anomaly that happens for them?
It's something intrinsic, What comes to mind for me is Rolling Stones gotta know Mossa.
Right.
And that is very true. So it's intrinsic. Both people coming from the same socioeconomic background. And one has more drive, and the other one will give me all the reasons why you can't achieve something. And then you have the other person looking at the same situation, and they're looking at it half full. I have an opportunity.
Right.
What can I do with this opportunity that will not just benefit me, but benefit those around me? Yeah. And that maybe the person's thinking may say, well, you know what? If I actually achieve this and I become a lawyer and I become successful, it's going to take me and my family out of the socio-economic situation that we're in. Whereas the other person would just go down a path of, well, I don't know, despair. So it's something intrinsic.
So it comes back basically to perspective and your outlook.
The why.
Yeah, the why. How do we get so, okay, we have so many people that fall into the trap of, I can't, it's not for me, I'm going to continue in the cycle. How do we break the cycle? for those people who don't have the perspective, they don't have it intrinsically. But we need, especially because of crime, we need to break cycles like these in the country and have people want to do better, want to become independent, move away from the dependency on CPEP and URP and these type of programs, and really innovate properly.
It's a mindset change. A mindset change, not just looking at individual situations, but across our country as a whole. And you're right. It starts with a lot of the programs we have, but it also starts from small, from school, the formative years, sorry. So you need to actually have programs. So we need to look at reform at all different levels. And it's not just reform at levels of those with socioeconomic backgrounds that may not be as well, but even reform at those who are in well-off situations, because at the end of the day, they need to understand that, listen, we have persons at this end of the spectrum, but when we graduate, we are seen as one. So how do we balance these scales? So it takes reform.
I'm also an advocate for mentorship.
Yeah.
That would be mentorship at work, peer mentorship, mentorship within schools, because you may be, you are an educator, and you just shared with us your circumstance.
Right.
And I'm sure that there would be a young man or a young lady in your classroom that you can identify with. We spoke about Nelson Mandela, when you are able to speak to a man in his language and you speak to his heart. So you, through mentorship, you then can talk to that young person and say, listen, I understand where you are, but this is you now, and this is where you can be 5 or 10 years later. So sometimes you have to help the younger persons to nurture that vision, and you can do that through mentorship. And mentorship comes in many different forms, but we have to be more proactive as a society and more intentional in working with our young people so that they can see their vision.
So essentially, the same way companies have corporate social responsibility, we need to have citizen social responsibility.
Yes, we do.
And I think that is something that we should actually put into policy. You should actually have hours that persons get time off to seek mentorship, because there are so many things being implemented to try and turn back the tide of where crime is going, where losing the youths are going or whatever else, and nothing is working. We could say what we want, but nothing is working. But I like that idea. Mentorship definitely will show these persons that there are other influences that are generally not present in their environment. And when you inject this, it does something to the mind. It changes the perspective. It opens the perspective now to what possibly could be.
That's right.
Yes.
But this will not happen unless it is deliberate.
That's
there is some policy informing it. Unless there is some wiggle room within your work schedule where you can make time for these persons. Because I can go to them and carry them to a high, give them the best motivational speech, and when I disappear, it falls apart.
That's it.
It falls apart. It has to be throughout a system over a period of time.
A nurtured relationship, very structured,
Very structured.
with different outcomes.
Different outcomes there, and it has to be deliberate in terms of you have to plan what your objectives are week to week with this person.
That's right.
And we may not have the policy right now, but it's definitely something you should think about as a citizen. Wherever you live, whether it's Trinidad and Tobago, the Caribbean, you have citizen social responsibility to look for somebody and mentor them when they need it. Because if it is more of us do that, then eventually we would start to fix the problems that we face. We're going to be right back after this break, guys.
My name is Jesse McBarrow, and you are looking at Mending Minds. Tell us your Mending Mind moment.
I will say set goals.
A lot of people get so caught up in the what, they forget the why. There's this fixation of this is what I'm going to do, and they forget why you pursue that in the first place.
Buenos días and welcome to the Emily Mais Talk Show. My name is Emily Mais. Tell me a little bit about your life in Venezuela.
I am more Trini than any Trinidadian.
You can see the effort of the Trinitarian people to learn Spanish too. They try to tell me something and listen, hola, whatever. They try to communicate in Spanish and they feel proud when they get it like, hey.
People have to try more to learn the language.
Tell me about the food. How was your experience with the food in Trinidad?
There's this crazy story at the beginning of the Bible. We have Adam and Eve, and they're in the Garden of Eden.
And everything in this garden is great. It's exactly as it should be, except there's this one tree that they're told by God not to eat from because it's dangerous and it will kill them.
So that's it. Avoid this fruit tree and we're fine.
Right, it seems pretty simple. But in this garden, there's a snake, and it starts telling a different story. It says that if you eat of this tree, it's not going to kill you. In fact, it's going to make you become like God.
And Adam and Eve, they believe the snake and they eat the fruit.
And because of this, the goodness of the garden is tragically lost, and evil and death enters into God's good world.
Hey, this is Tim.
And this is John.
We think one of the best ways to understand the Bible is to trace the key themes from its beginning all the way through to the end.
We also make videos that walk through the literary structure of every book of the Bible and how it relates to the whole.
JoinTheBibleProject.com.
One.
When you think about personal branding, one of the quotes that comes to mind is Jeff Bezos, to which he said, "Your personal brand is what persons say about you when you leave the room." So let's discuss that today. What are your thoughts about personal branding in terms of your attributes, that being your core values, your messaging, the things that you say and you as you go about your day, and how you operate with your colleagues? Is that something that needs to be consistent as you walk through life in terms of interacting with your families, interacting with your colleagues? What do you think persons say about you when you leave the room, Ronald?
I definitely think that they say good things. But I am with you in the sense that I say this term very, very often. My name is my biggest asset. And persons who really understand the business dynamic, they say it. My name is my biggest asset. My ability to sway somebody, or more so besides swaying them, to gain their trust, to have their confidence, for them to allow me to run with something on their behalf, sometimes without even asking, is my brand. And it's because of, as you say, how I carry about myself, how I interact with people, the ability for me to keep my word, to be trustworthy, to be loyal, and above all of that, with all of that, but above all of it, to add value. Because when I add value to you, I leave something long-lasting with you. I leave a part of my offering, a part of me. I think they call that Meraki, M-E-R-A-K-I, where you leave part of what you are invested into the situation. So, because I try to add value in every situation that I have, I think because of value addition, I do walk away leaving the person with some sort of positive feeling. This is not always the case, obviously. I am not Jesus.
But we try. And, one of the unfortunate things I've observed is that persons sometimes feel that personal branding is only about their appearance, how we show up, and not necessarily thinking about all that you would have said and our character. Those attributes, how we speak to people, what is consistent in terms of our core values. What do you have to say about that, Anya?
Personal branding is really what you believe in and what you stand for. So each person needs to ask themselves, and a lot of times, because we were speaking about youth just now, so a lot of times young people don't know what their personal brand is going to be. So at the end of the day, we need to consider not just our personal brand, but how are we affecting the youth and coloring their personal brands coming up? And is this the type of nation we want to build? You know, so it comes back to exactly what we were saying just now about having that change. So, Camille, at the end of the day, I remember at university we learned Capra's brand identity prism, right? That comes to mind. I think you remember that too, right?
I want you to remind me.
No, I'm actually going to ask Camille to remind us, please. It's something educational. We could all learn.
Sorry,
No,
I will leave that to you. Continue.
You all don't all go at once.
Don't all go at once. So that's something that we could look at, you know, Capra's brand identity prism, which helps to identify the questions we could ask ourselves to determine what our brand is and what we stand for. If we were to look at a product and consider ourselves a product, so you look at a company or a product, okay, so what are the colors of the brand? What are the brand characteristics? All of those things. So at the end of the day, we need to ask ourselves, consider ourselves that. So what, I like blue, I like pink. I would say those are my brand colors, my personal brand colors. What are my brand attributes? What are my core values?
So I have the prism in front of us here.
Okay, wonderful.
So yes, the prism is 6 parts actually. Physique is to the top, personality, relationship, culture, reflection, and self-image. I think physique speaks for itself, right? Personality, we just spoke about it. Who am I? And being able to define that and know who you are and how you want to position yourself in an industry.
What you want to be known for.
Correct. Relationships, and we spoke about that a couple of days ago in terms of networking. Culture. How does culture, and I want us to discuss that from 2 sides. The culture you have and the culture you create. So I'll give each, you all can choose whichever one. How does it affect your ability to personally brand? The culture you have and the culture you create.
I think it is important to firstly delve into the culture that you create.
Correct.
Because the culture that you have may not necessarily be the one that you would like to be affiliated with. And I think that it is very important that as young persons need to really focus on their perception. We spoke about that earlier. How do you want to be perceived by others? So it's important that you think about how do you want to be perceived and the culture that you want to be associated with, not necessarily what you have. If it is that what you have works for you, that's great. You may come from royalty like Nelson Mandela, okay? And you want all of those attributes to work with you. But most of the time we are looking forward to who we want to be and how we want to be perceived. And with that, you will then acquire those cultural attributes.
All right, I'm going to throw you in the deep end, Anya. So I agree with everything that Camille just said. You have to create a culture that works for what you want to identify yourself as your personal brand. So I am a lawyer, and I want to be an expert in that industry. I'm going to ensure I associate myself with the persons that will leverage my growth. But the culture that I'm from, that naturally existed, I can't change it. So in the middle of a meeting with 2 high court judges, my uncle walks in, half high, asking me when it is we're going to take a drink, not in that proper language. Yes. And why all are they dressed up in black suits so? Is this a funeral? Oh, wow. How do we balance the culture that we have already in terms of creating that personal brand effectively?
I'm happy you gave that scenario because I strongly believe the culture that you have can influence and color the culture that you want to create.
Right.
And a lot of the times, the culture that we have could either motivate us to create something totally different, or it could do quite the opposite, right? Right. In a situation like that, I would of course apologize to the person and then try to explain, okay, this is my situation, and then you have to have control over some things in the situation. You can't control uncle,
right?
But what you could control the next time is to not have the meeting at home, right? Or even if it's on Zoom, maybe go to a different location.
Correct, yeah?
So you have to look at what is in our control, but let's look at how culture would affect branding in that aspect. And Camille, what comes to mind for me is social media and how that affects culture, because a lot of times these young people are seeing things posted on social media and they're thinking that's the normal, that's normal culture, that's what normal looks like. When really and truly it's not. Normal is most likely mom and dad having 8 to 4 jobs, trying to put a meal on the table, rushing around to get stuff, to get the kids to school in the morning, and then in the afternoon who has lessons and all that. But on reality TV and social media, that's not what you're seeing.
Yeah.
So culture, whether it's the one you're creating or the one that you presently live in, it's being influenced a lot by social media.
Absolutely. The unfortunate thing is that persons have just become so receptive to what comes across that digital screen. So the reality of life has just been warped. But it is very important that people, again, take the time to look, again, what are your core values? And you have to stick to that, because that's how you yourself can start going off track and starting to do things that we would say out of character. Okay, so here you are, we spoke about that uncle that comes into the meeting, okay, and working with you, having your colleagues. And again, if it is that you are not cognizant of how you carry yourself, you make code switch and go way off so much that your colleagues don't even recognize you anymore, right? And they start asking questions. Well, maybe, we should be careful about where we invite such and such, because this is the company that they keep, So these are the things that I think persons need to be constantly aware of. Decide what are your core values, what you want to be known for, how do you want to be perceived, what type of messaging that you give, whether that may be physical, verbal, so that your perception is managed. This is a personal responsibility.
And of course, self-reflection has to come in there. Reflection, and that's the 5th part of the prism.
Yes.
The 6th part of the prism is self-image. Self-image as part of personal branding. Now, when we talk about self-image, we can't talk about what you wear, how you look, because they already covered physique. It's not about what you think, who you think you are already either, because we already spoke about personality. It's not about your culture or the persons you maintain relationships with. So then what does self-image mean? Why is it in this prism and it's different from all the other 5 things?
It's how you perceive yourself, how you see yourself.
And how should you see yourself? How do you build that into your personal branding? Because it's work. Building a brand at any notion is work. How do you build that brand of self-image for yourself?
It's by taking the time to ensure that in all your points of contact, that you are consistent. So if I tell myself that one of my personal attributes or core values is to be kind to persons, this may be whether I go to the market, whether I'm in a meeting at work, whether I'm interacting with my child, I need to be consistent across all of my interactions. If I'm on social media, I cannot be deemed as a bully. I also need to be aware that persons are watching me in every aspect of life, and that what I present myself to be is consistent across the board.
Now, I like that, the fact that you said that persons are looking at me at every aspect of life. And I don't think people understand that sometimes at all points in time that you are breathing, your brand is on display.
Your brand is on display.
Especially on social media, because when you are tagged in something that you should not have public on a social media platform, even as a young person, this could come back to haunt you 10 years later in a job interview. Somebody does a Google search on you, and this comes up that you were involved in this and you were involved in that. So yes, at all points in time, your brand is on display, and you have to protect your brand. But from the building aspect of it as well, I think that persons should start mapping out what their self-image and their personality for their brand is to be. The same way if it is I'm going to buy a house, I have to figure out how do I make the $100,000 down payment? What are the steps I'm going to do? How I'm going to pay back this mortgage? How long it's going to take, and whatever else. And these things should be put into your personal brand. What is the self-image I want? I don't have it now, but what is the self-image I want? What is the justification for me wanting this? Because if I don't believe it, if I can't justify it, then I'm not going to become it.
That's right.
So I definitely need to justify it and physically map it out. Physically draw a picture of myself and put in the points, put in the data that I need, the steps that I need to become this person.
And you know, to that point, Randolph, I just also want to say that it must be authentic.
For sure.
You cannot decide that I am going to give this persona that is not true to who I am as a person. So we go back to that self-reflection, but again, at the end of the day, authenticity matters.
For sure. So check out the prism. What's the name of the prism, Anya?
Capfra's Brand Identity Prism.
Capfra's Brand Identity Prism. And we will see you as we come back from this break, guys.
First book in the Bible is a book you've probably heard of. It's called Genesis.
Genesis comes from a Hebrew word. It's pronounced reshit, and it just means beginning.
Now, there's a lot of stories from the book of Genesis, and it's easy just to pull out a specific story and try to tell you what it might mean. But we think the best way to understand this book is to look at the book as a whole and show you how the whole thing is designed.
What are some of the fun ways you spend time with your family?
Promise yourself to be so strong that nothing can disturb your peace of mind.
Just wraps it up nicely with God, nothing is wasted.
When we let go of this obsession of who we think we are, that's when we can really embody unconditional love.
My name is Jesse McBarrow, and you are looking at Mending Minds. Tell us your Mending Mind moment.
I will say set goals.
A lot of people get so caught up in the what, they forget the why. There's this fixation of this is what I'm going to do, and they forget why.
Yeah.
You know, you pursue that in the first place.
Buenos días and welcome to the Emily Mais Talk Show. My name is Emily Mais. Tell me a little bit about your life in Venezuela.
I am more Trini than any Trinidadian.
You can see the effort of the Trinitarian people to learn Spanish too. They try to tell me something and listen, hola, whatever. They try to communicate in Spanish and they feel proud when they get it like, hey.
People have to try more to learn the language.
Tell me about the food. How was your experience with the food in Trinidad?
I said, look, I cannot help how I feel. Out of all of us, I'm the only one who isn't married, engaged, or has a child. Besides, keep sticking out. I've been real cool watching this while I meet you know.
Like I could use all the help, Smalley.
No, I could.
I could see that. But we all could use our help.
This is another episode of Life Matters, and I am your host, Latina Mata. Give us some insight into what is Miss Earth and what is so special about this pageant.
Okay, so like many pageants, there are a purpose behind the crown. So Miss Earth in particular, it's all about the awareness of the environment, and I'm basically an ambassador informing everyone to take care of their environment and their surroundings.
Take this moment, guys, to advocate the importance of mental health awareness, ensuring that this is something that is started to be placed in schools, in the school curriculums.
Yes.
Why aren't we having easy therapy access to schools, to parents, to the children? You know, that is something that we need to get some hands written about, right?
What's your personal brand? I can tell you what's mine. I'm the host of Sunset the Evening Show, and I intend to brand myself as the most dynamic host to keep you here every day from Monday to Friday, 6 to 7, viewing us. In addition to that, I promise you that Plus as a television station is going to go and grow through such achievement that you'll want to be nowhere else but here. But when's the last time you went around the savannah and you had a coconut, a nice cold coconut water? The difficulty to have that now is something to be spoken about, Anya.
Oh my gosh, yes. I actually went around the savannah this weekend, and I went to Shogunas this weekend, and the hunt for coconuts. Camille, do you like coconut water?
I love coconut water, and the price of coconut water has just blown me away. What is happening? Tell us.
So, guys, I discovered something really interesting. So, you know, last year we are accustomed, so I'm dealing with the 2 liters here, okay? So, yeah, last year we were accustomed paying like $40 for a 2 liter. Some places you got 3 for $100.
Right.
So, we'd buy it and put it in the freezer, at least I would, right? So, I'm thinking most people would be doing the same. Imagine my surprise. Some places it's $100 for a 2 liter.
A 2 liter what?
Of coconut water. Then the lowest price I got this week was $65 for a 2 liter. And I asked the vendor, so whatever happened to the 3 for the 100? That was the most heartiest laugh I've heard in a long time.
Okay.
So what is going on? I had to investigate more. Apparently, the dry season is really, really bad. So it is affecting the production of nuts. The farms are not getting enough water, so they're not producing as much nuts anymore. So I'm told, in addition to that, there is a particular palm weevil that causes red ring disease in coconut trees, and it's widespread across the country.
Oh.
So that's why even if you decide, okay, maybe I'm accustomed picking up my coconut water in the supermarket, yeah, it's between $95 to $98 this week. Sure.
And the average person obviously is going to think that these coconut guys are making a mint. They're digging out person's eyes. All they care about is profit. When the situation is now that supply has reduced, demand is still constant.
Correct.
So therefore you need to have a price hike.
Correct. You need to
Because
have
if you didn't tell me this, I would be as educated as I am walking into the grocery, looking for coconut water and probably using explicits in my head as to why I have to pay $95 for 2 liters of coconut water. What is being done to mitigate the situation? Anybody knows?
So I know that the red ring, what it happens to the coconut, it actually dries, it starts with the branches and it affects the production. From my basic understanding and knowledge, because of course, you know, I'm inquiring for people who are experts in this.
Yeah.
What I'm told is that NAMDEVCO is aware of the situation,
Okay.
and they're working with Ministry of Agriculture to work with the farmers in how to treat with this type of disease and the trees. From my rudimentary research, it's like cutting the branches off and burying them or burning. Or in some cases, if it's really bad, you have to actually destroy the entire tree.
So it's a fast-spreading disease.
It's a fast-spreading disease.
This is the first time we've had to deal with this?
I think we had this a couple years ago, if I'm not mistaken. But this has been happening. And if people observe, right around carnival time, coconut water went up slightly. So from January, we've been seeing spikes, So from $40, it went to like $50, and went to $60, and now it's like $100 for a 2 liter. So you have to ask yourself, okay, so what is happening with the supply? And this week I discovered that there is one part of Trinidad, Manza and Mayaru, Cedros, that primarily produces coconuts for us. And one nut, Camille, is selling for $12 to $15, depending on the size of the nut.
Wholesale?
Well, yeah. So if it is the coconut vendors are getting to buy it at that price, and then by the time you check the price of the bottles and the caps and whatever else they need for production or to fill in the bottles, then are they really making that much?
And then one of the concerns that I have is the growth rate. What is the time between planting your trees and having those nuts ready for consumption? So if this disease is moving very aggressively, what's going to be happening to our production? And is that now going to be added to the import list? Will we be forced to be drinking our coconut water out of one of those
cans?
Tetra Pak.
Which for me is a no-no.
It doesn't taste
It's just not the same.
And there is an economic fallout there as well.
It is.
Because if it is the industry, because we have a lot of big suppliers in terms of persons who extract these coconuts, bottle them. We have the vendors around the savannah. We have actually vendors in every nook and cranny of Trinidad and Tobago near a doubles vendor or anywhere you could get a cool coconut.
Yeah.
That is going to send unemployment up.
Exactly.
But so what my big question is if this red ring disease came before, why did we have preventative measures present to combat it, to look for signs of it not to reach this catastrophic state?
Maybe it's one of those situations as that of the common cold, in that when diseases come around again, it is a metamorphosis, sorry. And so that when you see it again, you have to treat it differently. So I guess this is where we need to be very kind to our Ministry of Agriculture and our specialists, so that now that they know exactly what they're dealing with, and it may be a different strain, we are speaking out of turn with not much accurate data and information, but we can only trust that they are working to have it done, rectified in a timely manner.
Yeah, we spoke about branding. How can we make recommendations for these business owners, whether it be the small guy on the street to the persons who own these larger scale bottling companies, to help their consumers understand and empathize with their situation? Because I doubt empathy is the situation right now.
I don't think it is. No.
And therefore there is a branding branding issue here in terms of protecting their brand and doing the right, having the right PR strategy to mitigate this challenge.
Yeah. At the end of the day, I think right now it's about supply and demand, and because the demand is high and the supply is little, people can afford in that case to call a higher price.
Right.
And then what's happening as well, you would notice the restaurants and the food industry will take the bulk of what is there right now. So the average person like us going around the savannah, like, oh my gosh, there is no coconuts, right? So, but as the larger companies, and yes, by the way, we do have coconut flavored water in Trinidad. It's a thing, sold in a bottle.
Artificial?
Yeah.
Okay.
So, but what they can do is look at corporate social responsibility and how you can then work with the farmers as a company, how you can work with the farmers. It's about managing the supply chain and the expectations of each stakeholder on the supply chain. And it's from the farmers to both of us going around the savannah, right? You may go to the supermarket. It's about the consumer as well. So if you work with the farmers, and yes, Ministry of Agriculture is doing the training, but maybe what you could do is look at getting seedlings and looking at the different, because the growth rates, they have different types of coconuts, and each type will grow differently. Some may grow faster, bear faster. So, you get the seedlings, you get production going, so that you're preparing. So yes, whilst we're dealing with one situation of the present estates having this this weevil, you're looking at maybe having some greenhouses, something in a controlled incubated environment that it wouldn't get affected, but at the same time starting the growth process. So you have stages. So that way you're looking at, okay, maybe next year we wouldn't be paying so much money for coconuts.
So it's an avenue for innovation, essentially.
Correct.
Innovation. But at the same time as well, because as much as Joe Public would be thinking that these fellas are making a pound and a crown, profits are up, it's probably the exact opposite. Because the overheads for, let's say, producing 100,000 coconuts per month, when you now can only get 40, 50,000 to produce, your overheads has not changed. And even though the price, you're doubling the price, tripling it in some cases, if you're not selling as much, you are actually in a situation of loss.
Yeah. Yes.
And if it is government doesn't step in to subsidize some of these vendors and help them through this difficult time, we might have an industry that almost disappears altogether, and somebody will disrupt it in Trinidad, come in with artificial water quickly. Somebody's probably already doing it, import it from somewhere, flood the market at 2 liters for $25, and fresh coconut, the Manswell strip, the estate in Cedrus will be a distant memory.
Correct. And then let's not limit it to that. Who's to say what is happening with the coconut and the price of coconuts right now is not going to affect other agricultural produce? It's not going to affect other sectors as well. I mean, if you look at every month when you go to the markets to buy green produce, you probably are paying more because the dry season would have affected production of not just coconuts but everything else. Tomatoes, cucumbers.
For sure.
Yeah.
They have been soaring at about $15, $16 around there, a pound there for months now because of the dry season.
Correct.
But wasn't the notion since like last year, October, September, that we're going to be going into a very difficult dry season?
Yeah.
Why was nothing put in place?
Well, again, this is climate change. And that is a situation that honestly you have little to no control. And one knows that with these unfortunate circumstances, that consumption patterns are going to change.
Yes.
So this is something that we also need to look at as a society, where there is a reduction or a lack of one commodity. We need to just shift our consumption patterns. And if we have a surplus of carrots, drink carrot juice, until we can get our coconuts back. But unfortunately, with climate change, I predict that we're going to be seeing a lot of circumstances such as this.
So intervention has to be done, but like Anya said earlier, this is a space for innovation.
Mm-hmm.
This is a space to see for alternative places to grow coconuts. Because if it is a thriving industry that generates this amount of money within our economy, we need to find alternative measures. And not just for coconuts, but like we said, it's happening with tomatoes, it's happening with cucumbers, it's happening with so many other things. And we don't want to just become 100% dependent on imports. 100% dependent on imports to come in to have everything, including coconut water.
Well, maybe one of the things that we can do as well is to look at neighboring countries and see how they have been able to control their production. In terms of, let's say, we recognize, I have recognized in the US that a lot of the coconuts as well come from Mexico.
Okay.
So just, to learn from them, to see that there's always a constant supply, and to see how best to regulate that part of the industry.
It's a little deeper than that as well. Camille is right. And but it's not, just like you're saying, it's not limited. I paid $8 a pound for watermelon 2 days ago.
Wow.
So it's not limited to that. But yes, we do import a fair amount of our produce. So what we need to look at as a nation is really going back to that agricultural roots and putting not just programs in place, but maybe more help for farmers to encourage more people and look at our bread basket. How are we feeding our nation? What are we doing to make sure that the next generation has that ability to grow produce, and what are our sustainable agricultural practices? Are we learning from all of these things we're experiencing now? What are we going to put in place next year and the year after that?
And 10 years and 20 years down the road, because every tree has a lifespan.
That's right.
And in as much as there is a lot of work going on in terms of training people to get into the industry, I don't think, and I'm using an HR term and applying it to this scenario. So, they talk about succession planning. In terms of you are the CEO, when you know your 10 years to go, you're going to start to put things in place for your successor.
Yes.
That could be that understanding and theory could be applied to agriculture. We understand that climate change is here. We have estimates of how hot things are going to be over the next couple of years, which means the expected lifespan of plants, the expected lifespan of soil, the usability, all this is changing. And this is data that we need to provide our farmers with. We need to provide them and equip them with mitigation strategies to start to plan for it from now. So if it is something happens 5 years from now that we were not expecting, they already have a backup plan. They already put things in place. So when this happens, it's not going to have an exorbitant effect of sending watermelon from $1.99 a pound to $8. Coconuts from $3 wholesale to $15. I am sure there are people wrapping gold paper around their coconut right now because that has to be worth more than diamond. But mitigation and succession strategies have to be put in place. Otherwise, our agriculture industry will dissipate altogether.
Agreed.
So innovation, yes, but as well as succession planning. The term succession planning applied to the agricultural industry. Yeah. So guys, we have Mother's Day coming up this weekend. What is Mother's Day for you personally? Now, obviously, we know internationally it's the celebration of mothers. All types of mothers, of course, persons who have actually given birth biologically, those who adopt, those who have nieces, nephews, friends that they consider part of their maternal nature, so to speak. What is Mother's Day for you, Anya?
For me, it's really remembering the women in my life who have contributed to me. But I believe Mother's Day shouldn't be limited to one day. It should be every day. And for the younger ones coming up, like my niece, I want to be a good role model for her. I want her to see Auntie and aspire to be something like Auntie. So what does my brand stand for as an aunt, right? So Mother's Day is, yes, we honor all the women in our life, but for me the message would be Mother's Day needs to be every day.
I would hang on to the one word, unconditional love.
Wow.
When I think of mothers, that's what comes to mind. And I too have had the luxury of having 3 mothers.
Okay.
Grandmother, my biological mom, and my aunt. Okay. And from all of them, I could not differentiate one greater love. You remember when you were asking to quantify? Okay. No. And hence the reason I believe that they poured everything into me to allow me to be who I am today. So when I think about mothers, that's all I see. I see women pouring into their families, so with unconditional love.
Wow. When I think about it, I think about the whole concept of maternity and what it means. It literally means giving life. Women can do something that I could never possibly imagine to do in my meager lifetime, and that's to bring life into this world. But it goes so much deeper than that, because the natural spirit of a woman, you give a woman a house, bet your bottom dollar she will make it. You give her people, whether it be children and a husband, they're still people, and she makes it a family.
Yes.
You will give a woman $10 and they will make it seem like 100. And they do. There are so many great women out here that go above and beyond in every scenario of life. So yes, I agree with you. It shouldn't be one day. We should have it once a month. But to all the mothers out there, from us at Sunset, from all of us at Plus, we want to wish you a really happy, a really healthy, a really enjoyable Mother's Day. Know that what you're doing is recognized. At any rate, because you are a woman, you give life and you bring life to every circumstance. When you're given a house, you make it a home. When you're given children and a husband, you make them a family. You make things work always in spite of difficulty. And for doing that for so long, whether you're the aunt, you're the grandmother, you're the mother, you're the friend, whatever angle you take, always give life to those around you. And we want to say to you, Happy Mother's Day. Enjoy the weekend. And from all of us, we will see you again next week.
Promise yourself to be so strong that nothing can disturb your peace of mind.
Just wraps it up nicely with God, nothing is wasted.
When we let go of this obsession of who we